All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy FAI Summit to all who celebrate. I hope you have your coffee, your tea, your water. Stay hydrated because we have a very packed day. Welcome to the Impact Stage and to the Fundraising AI Summit. I'm so excited to join you throughout the day on the Impact Stage today. As you are trickling in, I would love for you to share where you are joining from and what you are hoping to learn today. Whether it's from this session or over the next 2 days, I would love to know what you're hoping to learn. I'm Kelsey. I am from the Giving Tuesday team, and I will be hanging out here in the Impact Stage throughout the day today. As I am sharing more about your speaker and this session, please keep your hellos and your intros coming through the chat. And be sure to put your questions that you might have for Scott, who I'm going to introduce momentarily, in the Q&A panel throughout the session, because we should have a few minutes at the end to take some of your questions. Before I could get over to Scott, let's give some love to DonorSearch. DonorSearch is the nonprofit sector's go-to partner for prospect research, wealth screening, and AI-driven fundraising intelligence. They empower organizations to find and engage donors with greater accuracy, speed, and confidence. At the core of DonorSearch is a powerful combination of advanced AI, predictive modeling, and the industry's most competitive philanthropic database. They don't just deliver data, they help you turn it into action. And we are going to talk a little bit about turning things into action with Scott momentarily. DonorSearch is trusted by over 13,000 nonprofits, and they are redefining what's possible in modern fundraising. So you can learn more about DonorSearch and book a demo. There are some CTAs right there on your screen. All right, and now I'm honored to introduce you to Scott Rosenkrans. He is my friend and an absolute expert and thought leader on all things AI and AI governance. Scott is the VP of AI innovation at DonorSearch. He leads a data science team dedicated to developing and implementing custom machine learning. He is also a founding member of Fundraising.AI. Scott has been here from the very beginning, and he continues to contribute his valuable insights and experience to the nonprofit sector. So Scott is leading us today through no jargon, just action, build your AI governance plan. And I will hand it over to you, Scott, to take us away.
Very excited to be here. My camera's getting a little wonky. Can people see and or hear me? Okay, I think we're off to a good start. All right, wonderful. Very excited to be here. Today we're going to go through a building your own governance policy. Doing this in about 25 minutes. Obviously, this process takes a little bit longer. So this is going to be a walkthrough of a resource that we provide at Fundraising.AI, took the framework and turned it into a governance policy template for nonprofits to adopt. But no two governance policies are going to look the same. So how do we make sure that it speaks your language, your mission, your values, and aligns with your organization as a whole so that your team can adopt it and use AI responsibly and efficiently in a way that is appropriate for you. So we'll be walking through this. Just to overview, why does it matter in the first place? Again, no jargon. What is a governance policy to begin with? How does it compare against a responsible use policy or best practices? Do people usually have one? Do they not? How does it kind of fall in line there? And then we'll walk through each of the components of the template that we have, again, as a resource. I'll give you a link to that resource as well. Then we'll talk next steps on what does it mean once you have your policy up and running? How do you make sure that it's a living, breathing document? And how do you really fill out all the gaps to make sure that across the board, everything is covered in this policy? And then we'll have time for questions and answers, and I'll be hosting a lounge right after this for any follow-up questions. So why does it matter in the first place? Whether you have a policy or not, people on your team are using AI. It's a given. The problem is that if they are not using it in accordance with a policy that's been established, you might not know how they're using it. They could use it in ways that lead to risk or harm or reputational harm, right? So you want to have this policy that sets the framework of what does it mean for your organization make sure that it's aligned with the mission, and prevent using ways that could lead to harm, right? Having a policy that your org approves and your team understands prevents all these things from occurring, because we obviously don't want that. Nonprofits as a sector are using trust as their currency. So all we have is trust. And trust is a very easy thing to lose. It only takes one mistake, two mistakes to lose trust entirely, and then it's hard to come back from that. So this is setting up your organization for as much success as possible, and again, maintaining appropriate guidelines to make sure that everybody's using it the same way, in a way that's been approved by the organization. Now, most organizations might say that they have a governance policy, but oftentimes what that really looks like is this. It's roadblocks, it's stop signs. It's basically saying, don't do this. We know that there are harms, there are potential harms, there are potential risks. So the easiest way to make sure that that doesn't happen is by not doing it at all, right? If you don't use AI, if you don't think about AI, if you can't touch it or spell it, then we will never experience any of those negative outcomes as a result. But that's not helpful, right? That's not getting anybody to move along. That's keeping everybody kind of in the dark ages, right? Because we know that AI is so impactful and can have such a positive outcome for especially nonprofits that are under resourced and overworked. Has anybody heard of a nonprofit like that, right? Where you have not enough people to manage all the donors, all the potential prospects in your organization, and you need to use these types of tools to make sure that you're doing the outreach as effectively as possible. If the policy is don't use it, that's going to make it much harder for you to succeed as an organization. So what we really want is your policy to look more like this. We want to acknowledge the risks and the harms, acknowledge the potential for those, but make sure that you set up those guardrails so that way it can still be used appropriately, responsibly, and beneficially. We don't just want to let no guardrails exist either. It's like when I was looking at what did it look like when cars were first invented and there were no rules. 13-year-olds could drive cars. There was no instruction manual. There were no rules. There were no regulations. There was no right of way. There were no stop signs. People were getting run over in the streets. Like, it was pandemonium, right? It was absolute chaos. We don't want that either, right? But we don't want to fall into the other extreme of just stop signs. So we need to have those guardrails, and that's what today's conversation is all about. So again, at Fundraising.AI, we have the framework for responsible and beneficial AI for nonprofits. We've taken that and built it into a template. This template covers a lot of bases, but it's not going to apply to every organization the same way, right? There are some things in here that are only applicable to nonprofits that are building their own predictive models. Many are not doing that. Most nonprofits that are using AI are using Gen AI almost exclusively, right? So we're going to go through each one of these sections and tell you how to make it applicable and appropriate to you and your organization. But feel free to leave some of these things out, right? Again, no two policies are going to look the same for two organizations. So make sure that this speaks to you in a way that you use data, you access data, you have methods for outreach, whatever it is, just make sure that you're making this as aligned to your organization as possible. So if there are things in here that just don't speak to you or aren't applicable, feel free to leave them behind. We're going to go through each one of these sections one by one for you to follow along with. Again, there's a link down here, fundraising.ai/AI-resources, where you can download this. It's just a starting structure, but we'll walk through what each of these sections mean. So that way, you know, when you're going through this exercise with your team, with your leadership, you know what these means and you know how to make it speak your language. On that point, as I'm walking through this, note that this is not a one-person exercise to establish it for your entire organization, right? If you have leadership, if you have team members, like executive leadership team, you want to get multiple voices, perspectives, and understand what different stakeholders, how they feel about this. You want to have a number of people that have high-level responsibilities to look out for the entire organization as a whole, so there's no gaps in how data is used, collected, or applied. And so that way, again, this covers as many bases as possible. So I'm going to show you how you would use this as an exercise with your team. Feel free to take notes during this call, right? Again, you're going to be It's kind of like training the trainer. You're going to be doing this with your organization, and it could be sloppy. You can go through each one of these sections and just kind of spout out ideas and track whatever comes to mind, and it could be ugly. And the benefit of Gen AI is that you could throw all that into ChatGPT or your preferred Gen AI tool and say, turn this into a comprehensive governance policy for us as an organization, right? You just need to say, you need to combine what we have in here that is meaningful for you and combine your missions and values as your organization that you know better than anyone else. Getting those two in a cohesive document is really the ultimate goal for what we're trying to do today. So the first one, purpose. Purpose sets the stage for what this document is. Pretty self-explanatory, saying, why does this exist and what does it protect? Just kind of a takeaway, a sentence or two of someone who's looking at this document, they know exactly what it is from this section right here. Now we have, again, in the template we have right now, it's this AI policy aims to establish guidelines, best practices for responsible beneficial use of artificial intelligence, talks about who it's covering, what state you're in, designed to help navigate the complexities of AI adoption while maintaining transparency, accountability. Take all that or leave whatever isn't necessary for you, right? But basically you want to say, what does this mean for us? What is this document? What does it cover? Who does it cover? And what is our ultimate outcome and objective with this? Again, I'm going to just kind of leave some time in between each one of these. Feel free to jot down some notes on what you think your first thought is when you're thinking about this, right? What does it mean for your organization and how are you going to take this to other team members to review? Moving past purpose is scope. Now that we know we have this document and what the goal of it is, who does it cover? What types of tools does it cover? Again, most nonprofits are not building their own predictive AI tools. They're often using vendors. So vendors should be a part of that. But then ultimate end users, whether it's staff, team members, whether it's volunteers, right? So who are the people that are being covered in this that need to agree and abide by it? Who is it going to be applicable to? And then what are the tools as well? Is it just for using ChatGPT, or is it using ChatGPT and Canva? Any marketing materials? Is it using your Gmail with AI, with Gemini built in, or Microsoft Copilot? What do you want this to cover? Obviously, the more coverage, the better, because AI is starting to be built into so many different tools. And so you want to make sure that there's nothing that isn't covered by this that could lead to, again, potential harm or risk if it's not specifically called out or included in any of these categories. So make sure you're talking about who does it cover, what does it cover, what types of tools, technologies that you're currently using, and is it internal or external stakeholders and the different populations that are going to be applied to in this document. Okay. So we have the purpose of the document, and we have who it's applying to. Now we get into the meat of it. Now, just like, again, the FAI framework, we break it down into a number of subsections, categories of where we need to be very specific and explicit on what we're covering, how we're doing it, and the things that matter to us as an organization. So this first one, privacy and security. If you have a data governance policy, which I would assume a good chunk of you do, maybe not everyone, but a good chunk of you do. If you have a data governance policy, this is probably already covered in there. So you don't need to recreate the wheel, right? Take some of this, you want to, again, build it into this comprehensive document, or at least call it out and say privacy and security in accordance with our organization's data governance policy. But this is the collection of data, right? The storage of data for individuals that you as an organization are capturing data on, right? So if I'm a donor and I subscribe to your newsletter, right? If I make a gift, what data are you capturing on me and what right do I have to access that? There are a number of things in here like consent, getting clear permission for using data, or control, allowing people to decide how their data is used, restrict processing, let individuals limit non-essential data use. So it's not all the data you have on me can be used this way. I might be able to limit where you just use my name and my address, but everything else needs to stay within its current structure and not used for any third-party tools or anything along those lines. Rectification means correcting errors or updating inaccurate data. Erasure is delete data when requested or no longer needed. Accessibility, provide individuals access to their own data. Objection, respect the right to refuse certain uses of data. Again, kind of goes along with that restrict processing, and then privacy laws. Again, take what's important to you, take what's applicable to you, what you feel comfortable with, and feel free to leave the rest behind. We just want this to be covering those people that are trusting us with their dollars, with their relationships. That way they feel comfortable that we're treating their data as an individual relationship as well. Moving on to data ethics. Data ethics is the second section in our governance policy. This is more about using it responsibly. So not so much capturing it. This could be third-party data. So it's not something that you're getting from me as a donor, but you're buying lists from other other vendors, or you're enriching your data for something else to get a sense of how are they giving to other organizations, something along those lines. But make sure that the data that you're collecting from third parties also abides by ethical data practices of data collection, of usage, that their vendors are covering in the same way, right? Again, if it all ties to your donors, to your benefactors, to your stakeholders, you need to make sure that you are responsible for this. And so you need to hold vendors accountable as well. Again, if this isn't applicable, leave it out. We're going to have a section in here of vendor selection. So some of these can just fall into that vendor selection category to make sure that when you engage with a vendor, they're treating data in a way that is appropriate to how you would want to treat it. Moving along, inclusiveness, again, might not be applicable. This is oftentimes for model building, right? Building predictive models. If you aren't doing that, don't worry about it. If you are, we want to make sure that those that are included and also those that are excluded do not lead to bias, right? We know that models rely on data, but if a certain population is not covered in that data, it might not be able to accurately treat those individuals with predictions in the future, right? It might have biases about how they engage or how they don't engage. And so we don't want there to be any unintended harm by certain groups not being covered or being covered in unrepresented or inappropriate factor. So make sure that there's non-discrimination, that you're able to prevent bias as much as possible. Again, a lot of this deals with more predictive modeling. So if that's not what you're doing, this might not be as applicable. But inclusiveness and impact, what happens at the end result as an outcome, inclusiveness in design, making sure that their data, their voice, their information is representative in the overall data set being used for that type of model. Section 4, collaboration. This might not necessarily be like a data practice, but it is a good practice in governance, right? You want to be able to, what we're doing here is collaboration, right? Everything that you're going to be going through in FAI, learning from other organizations, sharing knowledge and best practices to strengthen responsible AI. Again, each nonprofit is its own individual organization, but we have come together as a whole, and we all have to commit to this, so that way it's not a Jenga tower or a stack of dominoes that one organization falls because their misuse of data, and then that negatively impacts the sector as a whole. So commit to collaboration, learning from others, this type of experience. And being here is already off to a great start. Transparency and explainability, again, more on the model building side. This is something that obviously we commit to as DonorSearch when we build predictive models, but make sure that AI is not a black box. Make sure that if you're building AI tools, that you're able to express and explain how these tools are built, what's going on behind the scenes, so that way someone who's the end user of that data, whether it's a predictive model internally, the end user of that data knows when a prediction is being made for the right reasons and doesn't go into bias or perpetuating, philanthropic metrics of older rich white males are always going to be donors, so we're only going to solicit older rich white males, right? So again, transparency, explainability, make sure that everybody's comfortable with the tools that are being used and that they understand them so that they can fully adopt them. Continuous learning, kind of along the lines of collaboration, but this is not a one and done. AI is evolving at exponential speed, as we all know. The AI that we had 3 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, is nothing compared to what we're going to see in the coming weeks, months, years, right? So this is not something where you get it, you're done, you check a box, and you never have to worry about it again. This is continually moving, evolving, and you need to be aligned with that as well. especially when it comes to a governance policy. This needs to be a living and breathing document. It cannot be a one and done, a set it and forget it. It needs to always be covering new technologies that are available. And so you need to make sure that you're up to date on what's going on in the space so that you can account for it in your governance policy. And again, you stay protected and you protect your team as well as your donors and your beneficiaries and stakeholders. Moving into accountability, make sure that when there are AI tools, especially this comes up in terms of agents and autonomous, make sure that there is human in the loop, there's responsibility, that someone is held accountable if something does go wrong, right? It can't be, well, AI made the decision, so AI is accountable and that's it. We're free and clear of any responsibility. Someone needs to be held accountable, again, to connect to that trust element that we have with all those that we're engaging with, right? So make sure that when you are, again, building tools, if there's a small number of you that are building tools, that you can replicate the outcomes, that it's auditable, that it's appealable, that you can go in and make any of those changes or tweaks as necessary. Make sure that no action is being taken without you having oversight, understanding it, being able to correct it, change it, or negate it if need be, right? Again, might not apply to all those or most nonprofits as they're primarily using Gen AI, but something to think about if you are getting a little bit deeper and as agentic AI becomes more prominent and available and accessible, this is going to play a larger role in your organization. Moving into legal compliance, an easy one, probably also in line with your data governance policy, but what laws are applicable to you, right? There's EU's GDPR, there's California's CCPA. If you have PHI data, you're should be in accordance with HIPAA compliance, right? So what laws are you abiding by to just cover even more so how you're going to be treating this data and treating these AI tools? Again, only applicable to whatever data you're using or how you're using it or where you're located. Social impact. This is making sure that, again, we do right by society, right? We're not creating widgets. We're not creating, new phones or clothes or anything that people can assess us by. We're doing good in the world. And so we need to make sure that everything we're doing as nonprofits continue to do good in the world. And that when we're utilizing AI tools, we're making sure that they continue that positive impact, that we're not just looking for short-term gains, but we're looking for longer view, what's going to make a overall positive impact in the world, or at least has the intention and the objective of making a positive impact in the world, right? So we're not going for just what's a quick, easy win now. We're not going to worry about the negative outcomes down the road. Always looking ahead further on to, again, ensure societal impact is overall net positive. Sustainability. This is obviously a big conversation now, less control that we have, but as time goes on, we are going to be able to control this more. This is environmental sustainability, right? We all hear about Gen AI and how expensive it is to train a model. There's a lot of confusion about how expensive it is to use a prompt. The last I heard from a reputable source, Ethan Mollick, if you follow him on LinkedIn, he put a paper out not too long ago about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Each prompt is the equivalent of streaming 5 to 8 seconds of Netflix, right? Not what it used to be of 10 gallons of water or the electricity of an entire community in Africa, but it's minimal impact. Building the models is a lot, using is not a lot, so it should not be a reason to discourage the use of Gen AI. But as we have more control over where our electricity is being used or how vendors are using AI and using external resources, we should be applying this to our governance policy just so we can always continue along to make sure that we're being sustainable with the environment and with resources. And then lastly in this is vendor selection as the last policy guideline. Again, a lot of the things that we talked about here might not be applicable to you as an organization, but you might be using vendors who are covering that, who are building predictive models. You're going to want to make sure that they are in line with how you treat data. You want to make sure that you understand the data that's being used, how it's being captured, how it's being applied, that there's transparency, accountability in their various AI tools, and so that you can feel confident that you are engaging in a relationship with someone that holds AI and data at the same value and respect, as well as the nonprofit sector, as you do as an organization, right? So make sure that if you are using vendors, that you're incorporating how to assess the vendor, their policies, how to select vendors, and so on. If you download this deck, there are exercises after that we won't have time to get into of treating your data at kind of like a green light, yellow light, red light of what has high security impact, what has lower security impact, but also vendor selection as well to kind of put them on a grid of understanding the potential for them abiding by these types of rules. And then lastly, as the policy, is review and amendments. Again, this is not a one and done thing. This has to be constantly reviewed. So putting in who's going to be reviewing it, how often, who approves and signs off on any of these new versions of our governance policy. Make sure this is constantly vetted, constantly being set in line with AI technology as it's getting more advanced and more efficient and more widespread, that your governance policy is up to date and not just collecting dust somewhere on the shelf. So that is the policy in itself. Again, a lot to work through, but make it actionable, make it bite-sized, and use Gen AI to help you, right? All you need to do is go in there and think about, what does this mean for us? Just take it out piece by piece like we did here, and then combine the two, your own thoughts, your team's thoughts, values, voices, perspectives, and what are best practices put forth by the framework that we have at FAI. Marry the two to make sure that it's applicable to you. Once you have that done, governance committees are the next step. Make sure that there's a team of multi stakeholders and different department representation to continue to talk about this. Vendor governance and assessment, data classification, all those are included in this deck. So please feel free to download this as we go on and connect with me various ways. I'm very reachable. I'd love to continue this conversation with each and every one of you.
Scott, thank you so much for quickly walking us through. I know it was rapid fire. We don't have a ton of time for questions, but I wanted to ask two very quick ones, if we could do them very quickly.
Yeah.
One, is this the type of policy that you would recommend being posted externally? So, the policy that you just walked through is obviously more for internal purposes. Is there a type of policy that you would recommend doing an external posting of?
I definitely think that you, again, trust, right? Transparency. These are key parts of this. I think that goes into communication with our donors, with the community at large, right? So whether it's this document or, and a lot of organizations have different policies that they express or they share publicly, it might be more of a summary. If you don't feel like putting all this out there, if there's certain things that are more privacy focused, it might be more of a summary of just kind of a general narrative of how you're treating AI and how you're treating data, so that those who are engaging with you feel a little bit more comfortable that you aren't just, flippant with it. You're really treating it with kid gloves and doing so in an appropriate manner.
Yep, great. I think that we are sadly out of time, but you are hosting a lounge, which I will talk about in just a second. For Lucy, and I think there was another great question from Waleed. Curious about resourcing for very small organizations and how to do this. So Scott, put that in your mind as a question that you're going to get asked in the lounge, and join Scott later to talk through that in more detail. So Scott, thank you so much for being here and for walking us through. I think this is such a fantastic resource. DonorSearch has also provided two incredible resources. They have their DonorSearch AI tool and their AI tool for nonprofits guide that you can access. We're really curious throughout the day how you are enjoying these sessions, what sort of feedback you have for speakers. We will pass all of that love along to our speakers. So please fill out those feedback forms. It's super important for us in making this event better each year. And as I mentioned, Scott is hosting a live Q&A in the lounge. So you can join Scott, bring your questions that didn't get answered. He can talk through any practical advice. You can join him in the Q&A, build your AI governance plan. So you can access that by you can see it up on the screen. You can access this table from the reception area. You will see lounge in the top navigation. Select that and then find the table with the lounge title. You can turn on your camera and your mic and you can actually talk to Scott live in that room. So encourage you to join him and do that. What is coming up next? I'm just giving a quick preview. On the Amplify stage, we have building ethical AI and fundraising solutions. On the innovation stage, we have OpenAI Academy, the AI essentials for nonprofit fundraising. And then on the impact stage, which is a stage that I am on right now, we have Wired to Give, how responsible AI can unlock effortless generosity. If you see the CFRE logo on there, that means that it is a certified fundraising executive session. Great opportunity for professional advancement. And I'm going to walk through a couple more housekeeping things. So the Spark stage is officially open. This is powered by our friends at Play, PLAI. These quick, high impact sessions are designed to give you ideas, give you practical ways that you can put AI into action very quickly. Coming up at 11:45, we have The Bold, The Brave, and The Blindfolded, presented by the amazing Kaz McGrath, the CEO and founder of Play. You can check the agenda and bookmark any of those sessions that you're interested in attending. And now you can get ready to join your next sessions. You can click on the schedule in the upper right-hand corner if you haven't already saved all the sessions you want to attend. You can do so by navigating to the schedule, checking out what's coming up next, save things. And that is it for this session. I hope to see you back here momentarily.